For most of us, we're digital natives. We grew up around technology. And the reality is that with social media, we just kind of bring technology naturally into our parenting. So, what do we do when our kids look at our social media feeds and see a little bit of their value or maybe even the importance of different events through that lens? What if they even see themselves through that lens? What does that do to kids? We're going to talk about that next here on the Celebrate Kids podcast in this daily segment, Face in the Dark. Before we get to that, I just want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Summit Ministries. Summit is a fantastic 2 week camp held in Manitou Springs, Colorado, and Lookout Mountain, Georgia. And there's two camps that are left open at the end of the summer for Manitou Springs, Colorado, and one of the sessions in Lookout Mountain, Georgia. I really think you should take some time, look into it, and have your high school or college kid get some incredible training with Dr. Kathy at one of these camps. You can find out more at summitministries.org/celebrate kids. Now let's turn to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So Dr. Kathy, in a new book by Leah Plunkett, she talks about a phenomenon that she calls sharenting. She's really blending two words, the ideas of sharing and parenting, to describe kind of all the ways that parents and aunts and uncles and teachers and coaches and really all trusted adults in a kid's life transmit children's private information digitally. Leah Plunkett says that this can really make kids feel vulnerable as they grow older and may undercut their ability to really tell their own story. Now, I have to admit something, Dr. Kathy. A number of years ago, I was on a walk with one of my sons, and he was climbing a tree. And he looked at me and said, "Dad, take a picture and post it for Grandma." And it made me pause and think, my son's world in that moment of climbing the tree included his grandma miles away, but also included him wanting his grandma to see him in the tree at that same moment. I didn't really like that my kid had that natural ability to pull himself out of this great experience in nature to say that we should now share that experience with grandma in the same way. Should parents be conscious of how we're walking through life with our kids in and out and all around all of these other things where we kind of take the here and now and think, oh, we should pull our phone out and take a quick picture? What does it do to kids when we really live a snap and post kind of lifestyle where everything is snap and post friendly?
Yeah, it actually can destroy them. I agree with her point that it doesn't allow them to tell their own story. And we know from research that employers and college admissions officers look at a social media history for a person. And in this case, the kids aren't even the ones posting. It's the parents and maybe a loved one, maybe a girlfriend is posting. And it does end up being somewhat controlling. And we've got to be aware of that. I will tell you that in the book I've written about technology, the first lie that I believe we have the potential to believe from the way that we use tech is that I am the center of my own universe. And I talk about how we can post something and watch for the like factor. We can auto-correct it, we can Photoshop it, and we can make our life be the highlight reel. And people think that they're looking at the whole world in which we live. When I've talked with our Summit students, we're fans of Summit Ministries. You can go to summit.org to find out more about the 2-week biblical worldview training program that I'm a part of, that we're huge sponsors of. When I've been there in front of hundreds of 16 to 25-year-olds, and I teach that lie that I am the center of my own universe, I'll remember forever a student who kind of bravely raised his hand and he said, Dr. Kathy, I don't believe I'm the center of my own universe, but I'm afraid I might be the center of my mom's. And there was a reaction in the room of tremendous agreement, meaning that without me performing for my mom, she has no one. And that's a very, very scary thing to put that idea in a kid's head.
Yeah, I agree, Dr. Kathy. That's really a challenge, I think, for so many of us as parents, that we live in that world where so much of our life as a parent ends up being really involving kids. And therefore, sometimes we can kind of place that burden or what have you on our kids to say that you make me happy, or you make me sad, or you make me feel proud, or you make me feel kind of depressed today because things didn't go the way that I had hoped for. Kind of with this, Plunkett highlights how this rhythm of posting then makes kids feel vulnerable, that they can sometimes take on that responsibility that everything needs to be, of that level, that this is something that mom wants to post, or we didn't have a very good day because we didn't take as many pictures, What do we need to understand about development and building this muscle of posting for our kids that really could maybe challenge them as they're maturing, even to building their own sense of right and wrong, identity, belonging, purpose? What are your thoughts there?
One of the biggest concerns I have, you've already alluded to, and that is the impression that perfection is what mom and dad are wanting, especially the mom with the phone. So have I done well enough? So as we're recording this, we're in the middle of high school and college graduation season. And my Facebook feed is full of lots and lots of caps and gowns. And I've wondered about families who don't have a kid they're proud of in that way, a kid who dropped out, a kid who asked not to have pictures posted because it wasn't a big deal to him that he was a high school graduate or a trade school grad or whatever. So I think we better be really careful that we're not turning our kids into performers, that they don't believe that it's their job to be so good and so markedly different from others that mom would have some point to brag about. True story that some of our listeners have probably heard me speak about at a conference was a young boy on a playground who did something cute. I was researching my book about technology. I was at a park. I was just observing families together. And a young boy, I would say he was 4 or 5, 6 years old. He did something that I thought was really clever on an apparatus, ran over to his mom. And he didn't say, "Did you like that, mom?" Which is what I think I would have said. "Did you like it, mom? Was that good?" He said, "Mom, was that good enough for Facebook or should I do it again?" So he's 5 years old and he's already decided that it's his job to make his mom look good. That is not a healthy perspective for a young boy to have, that he's performing for his mom or that he has to be good enough for his mom to notice him. I've also had more kids than I care to think about say to me, "Dr. Kathy, my parents take pictures of me playing. I wish they would play with me."
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, those are I think are gut shots for many parents. And hearing that, we could feel maybe like we failed. And I like to take a little bit of a, I don't know, glass half full, or maybe there is no glass and there's just water on the table and we have to now kind of do something with that. I think that there's a challenge there for some of us, that when we hear those stories, we have to engage it, understand that this isn't the end, understand that that was a moment inside of a story. And now we need to take a step back and ask a bigger question. How does this part of that story get resolved? Plunkett kind of highlights this, that oftentimes posting can make kids feel like they're just part of our story. And so as a parent, we can look at those things that happen and feel like that's now the story of me being a parent. And we might forget where our kids are and where their story is. And maybe how can we live into this narrative that we might be in many ways guiding our kids' story and making it feel like our story. How is that idea of really stepping in and being our kid's story a lie that can threaten kids and challenge them later in life? And what should we as parents do in those moments when we find ourselves there?
It's interesting. We're a family unit by God's intentional design. So we're certainly not saying don't ever post a picture of your child on your Facebook page. They're a part of you and you're a part of them. So how do we balance that? What's the rhythm? What's the ratio? 3 of me and 1 of them. I don't know if a family would kind of design what they might consider to be a perfect Facebook family page. Like what would happen if we would have a family page? And some families do, and they keep it private for relatives only, which I think is actually a stellar idea. Where my brain went was moms who probably don't make as many scrapbooks as in the old days. Like I made a scrapbook when I was a kid. I made scrapbooks of my birthday cards and my, get well cards and pictures from events and memories from vacations. And when my mom and dad sold the house, Dave and I were given a window of opportunity to come in and claim what we wanted that was ours. So I walked into the bedroom that had been my bedroom and everything was on a piece of furniture there. And mom and dad like, "We don't want it. If you want it, take it." And it was actually really beautiful to look through those photo albums and those scrapbooks. And I took out the pages I wanted and I did throw the rest away. And I still have those pages that in that moment mattered to me that I kept. Now, if we don't keep scrapbooks, if we don't train children to keep scrapbooks, if we don't have kids with their own memories, then they're dependent upon us to be keeping their memories for them. And that's a huge challenge. You've got 8 kids, but a parent who has even 1 or 2, do you have enough time and space and energy to do that? Or have you given your kids the opportunity, hey, do you want to make a memory page for your summer vacation? And maybe, the parents keep that for now and give it to them when the kids leave the house. I don't know. It's an interesting question.
Dr. Kathy was talking today, it reminded me of a passage that comes out of Luke chapter 2, and I'm going to begin reading at verse 25. Now there was a man in Jerusalem named Simeon, who was righteous and devout. He was waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was on him. It had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not die before he saw the Lord's Messiah. Now moved by the Spirit, he went into the temple courts. When the parents brought their child Jesus to do for him what the custom was of the law, Simeon took him in his arms and praised God, saying, Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace, for my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles, and the glory of your people Israel. It's just really exciting to think that there were people really who had very little significance, kind of in the whole history of the world, but who God spoke to in special ways about the dynamics of what Jesus would do. Sometimes I think with our kids, we can kind of see that through a similar lens, that what's happening today may be significant or insignificant, that we want to document or highlight the different things as if everything is kind of significant, whether they're eating ice cream on the front porch or going swimming in the lake, or we're going on a vacation somewhere special and exciting, and we want to document it all for our kids so that we don't forget it. But what if instead of documenting, kind of creating a snapshot of it, what if we did kind of a Simeon and just talked about the dynamic beauty and the grace of God in this moment? What do you think it could do for these kids? And speak into their life, maybe teach them what's happening here in these moments, rather than just taking a snapshot for us to look at later or for us to show our parents. Let's speak into these events and really have them be a special time period for our kids. I think doing that can really excite them and help them see what God's doing in these moments and be a bright light that's going to shine and cut through some of the darkest times that they're going to face in the future. I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast and this daily segment, Facing the Dark. I want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by Summit Ministries, a 2-week Christian camp that really does a deep dive into Christian worldview, and it's something that Dr. Kathy speaks at routinely and is speaking throughout the course of the summer. There's 2 camps right now that are open for kids, high school kids or college kids, to join and really get some of this dynamic training. One of them is in Manitou Springs, Colorado, kind of at the end of the summer, and another's in Lookout Mountain, Georgia. I really think you should look into it. You can find out more information at summitministries.org/celebrate kids. Again, that's summitministries.org/celebrate kids. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender, and I'm looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.